Oh, right.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to today's hearing. Today we're going to hear some more witnesses from Harley. Yes, Mr. Minute.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, good morning. We're going to hear from Mr. Mike Albiston, please. Can we please call Mr. Albiston?
I do solemnly, sincerely and truly declare and affirm that the evidence I shall give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Thank you very much, Mr. Albiston. Sit down and make yourself comfortable. All right? Yes, Mr. Minute.
Mr. Albiston, good morning. Thank you very much for attending today to give evidence to the inquiry. We're extremely grateful to you. If you have any difficulty understanding any of my questions, or you would like me to ask them again, I'll do that, or I'll rephrase the question. Can I please also ask you to keep your voice up so that the transcriber who sits to your right can hear clearly what you're saying? And I should also say that a nod or a shake of the head doesn't get down onto the transcript. So if the answer is yes or no, please say yes or no, and don't nod or shake your head, please.
Yes, thank you.
Now, you've made a witness statement for the inquiry, dated the 8th of November 2018. It's in a folder on the desk in front of you if you want to look at the hard copy, or it'll be on the screen in front of you. It's HAR 3010151, please. Is that your statement? Can you confirm?
It is, yes.
Thank you. Could you please go to page 15? Is that your signature?
It is, yes.
And have you read this statement recently?
I have.
And can you confirm that the contents are true?
They are true, yes.
Thank you. Have you discussed your statement or the evidence you're going to give today with anybody before coming here today?
No, I haven't.
Thank you. Now, I want to start with some questions about your background, please. You began work in the construction industry, I think, in 1983 as a trainee quantity surveyor.
That's right, yes.
And you received a diploma in quantity surveying in 1994, I think.
That's right, yes.
Since that time, I think you've worked as an estimator. Is that right?
That's right, yes.
Can you provide us with a brief description of what that role entails?
Basically, when tender inquiries are received, I go through the documents, the drawings, do a measure of the materials needed on that project, contact suppliers, material suppliers to get the prices, and compile the quotation for submission to the main contractor or an architect.
And that would involve also pricing jobs in order to tender for projects, would it?
That's right. Yes, it basically means like compiling the prices from other material suppliers.
And would that involve consideration of things like the cost of materials, the cost of fabrication, cost of design works?
That's right. It's all costs, really.
All costs.
Yes.
Just a minute, I'm sorry to interrupt you so soon, but my transcript is not running. Is yours running?
No, it isn't, and I was going to mention that if it didn't spring into life. So I don't know what's gone wrong.
Would it be possible to look into that? Because there are a lot of other people who are seeking to follow the transcript as well.
Since my transcript is working,
You, Mr. Renters, yours?
mine is.
Oh, well, you see, you're favoured. Do you have any idea where the problem may lie?
Mine is.
No, I didn't think yours would be if mine would.
Mr. Albiston, we'll take a short technical pause, I think, while the
I'm
panel
sorry
apply.
about this, Mr. Albiston, but some people find it very useful to have the transcript running in front of them. Isn't mine? Oh.
I think, Mr. Chairman, the remote access to the transcript is working,
Yep.
but that in the room isn't. Thank you. No. Solved. Thank you.
Good. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Right, sorry about that. We're ready to go on. Yes, Mr.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Now, I want to ask you some questions about your role in general at Harley. You say that you began working at Harley Curtain Wall in 2013. Is that right?
That's right, yes.
When in 2013?
It was
Do you
the
remember?
beginning of October.
Beginning of October.
That's right.
And before that, you'd worked for Astrolite.
That's right, yes.
Did you, or so you went from Astrolite to Harley, did you?
There was a period of about a year when I was not working, but yeah, I went. There was no jobs in between that.
Right, I see. Okay. And at Astrolite, you were working on jobs of a value between something like £50,000 and £750,000.
That's right, yes.
Was Harley a larger organisation than Astrolite?
It was similar in size. I think the big difference was that Astrolite was more of a fabricator of materials like curtain walling, whereas Harley bought in all their materials. So they didn't actually; they only just supplied the service of actually installing the products.
I see. Would it be fair to say that after you joined Harley in October 2013, you were dealing predominantly with projects of a much higher value than the projects you were dealing with when you were at Astrolite?
Yes, I would say that, yes.
Were you provided with any training by Harley when you arrived?
No.
Were you provided with any supervision to make sure that your work on these larger projects was suitable?
Only really that when I prepared a quotation, it would be checked by Ray Bailey or Mark Harris before it went out.
I see. How many projects did you work on at Harley before working on Grenfell Tower?
It's possibly about 2 or 3.
2 or 3, I see. Can you name those?
I believe one was Great Arthur House, I think it was called. She's near Golden Square. She's a tower block, and there may have been a small curtain wall project. I can't recall the name of it.
Right. You say Great Arthur House was a tower block. Did it exceed 18 metres in height?
I believe it did, but it wasn't clad. It was more windows and glass cladding. It wasn't actually any ACM or aluminium cladding.
Was it residential?
It was residential, yes.
Right. And was Grenfell Tower the largest project on which you'd ever worked?
Possibly, yes. I can't recall. It's, I've worked on a lot of projects at my previous jobs, but it probably was one of the largest ones, yes.
Now, before you would ordinarily provide a price on any project, would you need to consider the NBS specification for it?
Yes, I would.
Yes. And also any drawings prepared by the architect?
That's right, yes.
And what about employers' requirements? Would you consider those as well?
I would briefly look through those, but they would be more of jobs that Mark Harris or Ray Bailey would look into.
Right. And is the reason you looked at what you did look at that without that information you wouldn't be able to consider what Harley was required to do for that particular job?
That's right, yes.
Yes. So is it fair to say that as an estimator you'd have to have a broad knowledge of design in order to be able to price the works accurately?
Yes. Obviously, you've got drawings to follow and sort of get measures off of, but yes, it's pretty much.
Yes. And in general terms, would you agree that, I mean, tell me if this is right or wrong, that the aim, your aim, would be to provide a quotation that was competitive, but also maintained as a large profit margin for Harley as possible?
Yes, it would.
Yeah. So when you were looking for costings, would you also consider whether the job could be done for less money using alternative products?
Possibly, but then it was really down to the MBS, what was specified in that, really, so I would follow that firsthand.
Just following up on that answer, does that tell us that you, in estimating, were confined or constrained by what the NBS told you?
Pretty much, yeah, unless I was instructed otherwise.
And who would normally instruct you otherwise?
That would be Ray Bailey or Mark Harris.
And generally, what would be the reasons for instructing you otherwise?
Well, for example, on Grenfell Tower, we specified a different window system from the specified, which was Wacona, and we quoted for metal technology, which was a sort of project that Harley has worked with extensively.
When doing the estimating, would it be your job to make a selection of alternative products, or simply to cost what you were told to cost?
Just cost what I was told to cost.
Right. And where you did choose alternative products, would that process extend to assessing whether the alternative products were compliant with the building regulations and associated guidance?
Well, I wouldn't be choosing them, so I'd just be told what they were.
I see. Did Harley at any stage provide you with any training or CPD to assist you with your role?
No.
Right. Did you yourself undertake any training yourself to get up to date with or familiar with the building regulations, for example? No. What about statutory or industry guidance?
No.
What about best practice within the facade industry?
No.
Does that tell us that you didn't keep abreast of general developments in the cladding industry?
I would, keep abreast of it in the news or, in the construction news, but I wouldn't actually be trained on that.
I see. So you say construction news. Does that refer to particular publications, specialist publications?
Like building magazine, construction news, things like that, really, but not in great detail.
Right. Would you look at those regularly or just whenever the fancy took you?
Whenever, really. It wasn't really it wasn't necessary for my job to actually keep that fully informed of that sort of information.
Yes, I see. Turning to your role at Grenfell, in your role as estimator on the Grenfell Tower project, you considered all the elements, I think, that Harley was being asked to subcontract and would provide a price for which Harley was to do that work. Is that right?
That's right, yes.
Now, if you can go to paragraph 8, please, of your statement. Bottom of page 2, you say, my involvement with the refurbishment works carried out at Grenfell Tower was to produce a quotation for Harley's scope of works based on the tender documents received from the potential main contractors, which included an NBS specification and architect's design drawings. Would your work be done in order to tender for the project?
That's right, yes.
Yes. And would it be fair to say that your involvement was therefore predominantly in the pre-contractual stage?
That's right, yes, it was.
Did you receive a tender package from each of the main contractors who were tendering for the works?
I believe I did, yes.
And did each of those tenderers provide the NBS specification?
They would have done, yes.
I see. And then you would have looked at those for each potential
Yeah, but every NBS
contractor.
would be the same document anyway.
Yes, I see. And would the same apply to drawings which had been created by Studio E at that stage?
Again, yes, it would be the same document.
Yes. Now, when you got the tender package from the main contractors, well, sorry, there's a prior question. Do you remember how many tender packages you looked at from different potential main contractors?
I only remember from just seeing the names on my transcript, so that was probably the amount we got.
But paragraph 7, I think.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
So did you get? I think you say you did. You got a tender package from all or each of Ryden, Waits, Mullally, and Durkan and Keepmoat.
That's right. Yes.
I see. And did you provide estimates and quotations for each of those potential main contractors?
I believe from memory that I think Waits may have pulled out before tender submission, so it would have been just the others.
Right. And when you got the tender package from any of these potential main contractors, did you form an impression when looking at them about the nature of the documents you were provided with?
In what ways?
Well, were they more or less detailed or prescriptive than normal in your experience?
They were probably more on the higher side of being, detailed than normal.
I see. So more detailed than you would normally have seen in the past.
That's right. But NBS documents usually are quite detailed, but the drawings were quite detailed.
I see. Now, I want to turn to look in a little bit more detail about your involvement pre-NBS specification. Can we turn the page in your statement, please, to page 3, paragraph 9, and you say there, my work on the project began in December 2013 when the tenders were received from a number of potential main contractors. I reviewed and assessed the tender documents and built up a cost estimate based on the specification and drawings. Is it quite accurate to say that your work began on the project in December 2013?
That's right, yes, when the tender inquiries were received.
Well, let's just explore that a little bit more closely. Can we please look first to HAR 405555? This is an email from Mark Harris to Thomas Reck at Studio E, dated the 1st of November 2013, and it concerned pricing, as you can see down the email string, for zinc cladding. You see down the page, and it's a series of emails, and they go over this page, but you can see running your eye up from the bottom of page 1 up, the subject is zinc cladding. Now, this was, as we can see from the date, before the NBS specification was received by Harley, correct?
Yes.
And you can see from the top email that you are copied in by Mark Harris in his reply to Thomas Reck on that date, 1st of November.
That's right, yes.
Was this your first involvement in the Grenfell Tower refurbishment project, do you think?
It's probably the first time I actually was aware of the project, but I wouldn't say I was actually involved with it.
Right. What caused you to be involved in the project from this point?
When we received the tender documents in December.
That wasn't quite my question. Let me ask it a different way. How come you got involved at this point by Mark Harris on the 1st of November 2013?
Right. Well, knowing that Grenfell Tower was going to come out for tender in December, Mark copied me into the emails so I could put it into the document file, just so it was ready for my extra job to actually price. So I had the information there already.
I see. Shortly before this email, we know that Mark Harris had prepared an outlined budget for Studio E following a meeting that he'd attended with Ray Bailey. And I just want to show that to you if I can. It's at SEA 402275. This is dated the 18th of October 2013. Just have a look at it, if you would, Mr. Albiston. Just looking at it there on the screen, do you remember this document from the time?
Yes, I do.
Do you remember whether you had any involvement in preparing it?
No, I didn't.
You didn't. When was the first time, to the best of your recollection, that you saw this document?
It was probably around the time of receiving the tenders. It would have been late November, early December.
I see. Now, Mark Harris told the inquiry that Mr. Albiston, you drew this up in October 2013. Is that wrong?
Yes, I believe it is. I said I didn't have any involvement in Grenfell Tower before December.
Right. Can you explain how, without your help, Mr. Well, let me ask it again, a slightly different way. Do you know, from your own knowledge, who drew this document up, if it wasn't you?
It was probably Mark Harris and Ray Bailey between them.
Right. You say probably. How sure are you about that?
Probably 100%.
Right. And do you know where they would have got the figures from in respect of, for example, the first item down, Renault Bond zinc cassette rain screen?
Probably from CEP or Alcoa.
Right. Okay. Do you know, from your own knowledge, looking down the first page there, why Renault Bond products were being proposed and no other products at that stage?
I don't know, I'm afraid.
Are you able to explain why, although prices include insulation, there's no insulation product referred to?
I think really insulation, there are different products available which can be obviously used, so I think there was nothing specified at that time.
I see. But are you able to identify, even now, what insulation product formed the basis or was included in any of these numbers where insulation is referred to?
I don't know, because it just says insulation, so I don't know what product was actually used there.
Right. If you go to page 2, I just want to try one thing out with you if I can. You'll see under exclusions, towards the bottom of page 2, 4 entries up from the bottom, no allowance for fire-rated products. When you did first see this document, what did you understand that to be referring to?
Sorry. Right, that's probably referring to windows and curtain walling, so if no sort of fire-rated products to that.
I see. Can I ask you to look at HAR 405461, please? Now, this is an email dated the 4th of October from Bruce Soanes of Studio E to Mark Harris, copied to Ray Bailey. Now, you're not copied in on it, possibly because you'd only just arrived. at this time. In the third paragraph down, it says the client's response to your budget was, what about aluminium? We haven't had samples or cost back from Ned Zinc, but this could be ideal if it eliminates the need for fabricated trays and is true zinc. And then there's a reference to the Ned Zinc website. And then it goes on to say, would it be possible to come back with budget costs, or what would the material cost uplift be for a Nova composite versus a metallic faux zinc Rainabond panel? I know you're not copied in on this, and you had, I think, just arrived at Harley at the time, but were you made aware either of this email specifically or of the discussion at the time about Ned Zinc?
No, I can't recall any particular discussion about it.
Right. Did Mr. Harris ever ask you to source quotes for a Ned Zinc panel?
I don't believe he did, no.
Do you know why the October 2013 budget that I've just shown you only contained Rainabond options when, as we can see from this document, 2 weeks earlier, the architects had made it plain that they had wanted to investigate the Ned Zinc option?
I don't know.
You don't? Do you know why the detailed budget spreadsheet dated the 18th of October, so after you'd arrived, was drawn up without your involvement?
Because it was a budget stage and I was working on other projects at that time, so I couldn't actually devote my time to doing that budget. And as I said, I only just arrived, so really Mark and Ray knew budgets that they wanted to put out for these projects.
Can we look at HAR 405444, please? This is an email from Mark Harris to Thomas Reck of Studio E on the 7th of November 2013. As you can see, copy to Ray Bailey and also to you, Mr. Albiston. Do you see that?
Yes, I do.
Good morning, Thomas. A response has been received at last from KME, although I'm not sure it tells us a great deal. All that has been provided is a base square metre rate for panel only, ex works. That must have taken all of 10 minutes to think about, so quite why it's taken them 2 weeks to provide it is a mystery to me. Now, the KME panel that's referred to there was a Proteus panel, I think, wasn't it?
That's right, yes.
Yes, and in fact, you can see that a little bit lower down the email. Do you know why it was that Mr. Harris was obtaining quotes from KME for the Proteus zinc panel rather than you as the estimator?
Again, really just timescale was... I was tied up with actually doing other projects, pricing those, so Mark was doing these.
Right. Why were you copied in on this email then if you were
Because
tied
of
up
my
with
future
other
involvement with Grenfell, actually doing the actual tenders.
projects? I see. Now, he goes on to say, under the reference to Proteus HR composite, quite what finish this is based on, I have no idea due to lack of information. I have to say, from a Harley selfish point of view, our preference would be to use ACM. It's tried and tested on many Harley projects, and we are confident in the cost base. What impact did that view of Mr. Harris's have on you at this time?
In what way, sorry?
Well, let me ask it more specifically. When you came eventually to price the Harley work or Harley job for Grenfell, were you influenced in your pricing as a result of Harley's preference here, as expressed, for ACM?
No, because the MBS was specifying the Proteus, and I think there was options for ACM, but I was just pricing as a specification document.
Can we go to SEA 409997, please? Here we can see that 2 or so weeks later, on the 21st of November, Mark Harris sent an email to Bruce Soames, copy to you and Ray Bailey. You see that?
Yes, I do.
And that again relates to Rainabond pricing. And we can see a little bit lower down in the email that he says ACM current standard. You see at the bottom, standard rate face fixed on the wall 187 £150 per square metre, etc., and ACM standard rate cassette on the wall, £232.50 per square metre, etc. Had Raynabond, to your knowledge, provided prices for the Grenfell project for you to build up these prices quoted to the client?
I hadn't seen any prices, but again, I was not putting the prices together, so I wouldn't have possibly seen them.
And again, was the reason that you were copied into this email really in readiness
That's
for
right, yes.
jumping onto the Grenfell job to do the estimation work for that? I see. Can I show you another email? Same day, HAR 405512, please. This is an email from Debbie French to Mark Harris, as I say, of the same day, 21st of November 2013, and it responds to an email, I think, from you. If we go, I'm sorry, from Mark Harris of the 8th of November. So looking at Mark Harris's email of the 8th of November to her, morning Deb, do you see halfway down?
Yes.
Bruce at Studio E has been talking with us about options for the cladding. He asked us for guide rates on the following, and you can see there are 4 Raynabond finishes there. How much more per square metre would these colours be over and above your standard range? Now you're, I think, copied in on that as well, which is why I asked it. It was an email to you. It was actually to Deborah French, copied to you. Do you remember seeing this email at the time?
I would have done, yes.
And again, why were you being copied in on this? Was it because you were being readied for the?
That's right, yes.
For the eventual MBS spec, and then we see the response from Deborah French back to Mark Harris, not copied to you. Hi, Mark, is discussed and sorry for the delay. For the colours shown below, we would offer an approx rate to our approved fabricators of £32 to £35 per square metre. Let me know if you need any other details. Do you know, and I know you didn't, well, first of all, did you see this email at the time, or did you discuss it with Mr. Harris at the time, do you think?
I wasn't copied in. It may have been something I might have been forwarded, or a printed copy may have been given over to me.
Right. Does it ring a bell with you?
I'm afraid I can't recall.
Do you know why these quotations have been obtained by Mr. Harris at this stage now? We're 3/4 of the way through November, and not by you as the estimator?
Because I was, again, pricing other projects at the time.
Right. Okay. So how much positive involvement did you have? We've seen you receiving a number of emails, but how much proactive involvement did you have on material choice at this stage, or by this stage?
No involvement at all. I just received the emails, copied in. As I said, I didn't actually properly look at Grenfell Tower until December.
On what you could see, is it fair to say that even before the NBS specification was received as part of the tender package, Harley was already giving input into the products that should be specified, particularly in relation to the rain screen?
I think they were after options and different rain screen products, so that's what they were responding to.
Right. Was it your impression that Harley, and particularly Mr. Harris, was aiming to get Raynabond ACM included in the NBS specification?
I don't think so, no.
Were you aware that an FR core was available for Raynabond ACM products?
No.
You weren't. Can we go back to your statement, paragraph 9, please, page 3? And I want to look a little bit more closely with you, please, at the obtaining of quotes by you. And you say, paragraph 9, my work on the project began in December in 2013 when the tenders were received from a number of potential main contractors. I reviewed and assessed the tender documents and built up a cost estimate based on the specification and drawings. We looked at that earlier on. Would you agree that you needed to ensure that the information was appropriately extracted from the drawings and the specification in order to be able to price the project reliably?
That's right, yes.
And you would need to raise queries regarding specific elements or to clarify anything if there was anything there you didn't understand.
That's right, yes.
And if that was so, who would you go to? Who would be your first port of call?
I'd say probably Ray Bailey or Daniel Anketell-Jones being the technical manager.
I see. Daniel Anketell-Jones. Was he involved on this project by the time you came to be involved more closely in December 2013?
I believe he had obviously a brief input into it, but not in a full-on role at that stage.
Right, I see. Now, we can see that you began asking for quotations, or seeking quotations for various products in the NBS specification on the 11th of December 2013. Can you look at SIG 50139, please? This is an email from you, Mr. Albiston, to Matthew Irving, and he is at SIG, isn't he?
That's right, yes.
Or was. I'm so sorry. I think, in fact, he is at KME, actually. Sorry, I've put that to you wrong. He's at KME. Is that right?
That's the process cladding, isn't it? Yeah.
Yes. And was this email the first email sent out by, or first message sent out by you from Harley in order to seek quotations for
It
rain
possibly
screen
could
material?
be, looking at the dates, yes.
Right. Now, if Mr. Harris had already obtained a budget price from KME, as we've seen he did on or before the 7th of November 2013, and we saw that email earlier on, do you know why you were sending this request again?
Because we had the drawings and an NBS specification now, and I just thought I'd put it out there again just to make sure that it was all as the drawings and specified.
I see. And indeed, in the second paragraph, you say, previously you've given budget prices to Mark Harris. In order for you to provide a firm quotation for the rain screen, what do you need from us? I've attached elevation drawings and the NBS specification for now, and we see that you do attach those documents. So was this you seeking a firm quotation as opposed to really an estimate?
That's right, yes.
I see. And did you need to get KME to see the technical data in order to be able to get a firm quote from them?
That's right, yes.
Right. And that meant that you yourself needed to understand the technical data?
Not myself, no.
Right. Now, we can see you approaching KME here directly for a quotation rather than going via a fabricator. Is that right, first of all?
I believe KME actually fabricated as well, so the prices cladding would have come straight from them.
I see. I was going to ask you, when considering the Proteus HR panel, is that something that actually needed fabrication?
I believe it did, yes. It was a similar sort of cladding panel.
I see. But I think you're telling us that KME supplied them ready fabricated.
That's right, yes.
I see. And did they supply them ready fabricated in both cassette and face fixed form?
I can't recall.
Right. If we look at the quotation for the Proteus panel, this is at SIG 6042, please. This is dated the 14th of January 2014. We can see that from two places at the top of the page there. And it would expire on the 14th of February 2014. And it comes to Harley. You're the customer contract reference. You see that?
Yes.
And if we go to page 2 of this document, if you look at the bottom right-hand corner, you can see that the total price in pounds for essentially a zinc system, Proteus, was £546,264. Was that the price that you used to generate Harley's quotation, based, or so far as it was based on the Proteus panels?
I can't recall without actually seeing my pricing documents, but if I could just see the previous page again.
Yes.
Possible.
Go back to page 1, please, if we could. You can see the build-up here. It's scope of supply, zinc spandrel cladding and zinc column crown panels.
Yeah.
And it's all Proteus HR panels flat.
We just move up slightly, sorry.
Move up slightly with that.
Yeah, so that's it. That's fine, thank
Right.
you. I'm pretty sure it would have been based on that, really. I may have just remeasured the areas, but it would have been based on these rates.
It would have been. Okay. And just to be clear, if you go to RYD 402607, this is the quotation that Harley eventually gave Ryden. We can see it's 29th of January 2014, so exactly halfway between the date of issue and the date of expiry of the KME quotation. If we go to page 5, I think it is. Sorry, page 9. If we go to page 9 on that, in that document, yes, we can see the cost. There's a cost summary there, and we can see how you've quoted, or what you quoted, for the zinc column cladding and crown, zinc rain screen cladding to spandrel panels, and aluminium rain screen cladding generally. 3 figures there in the middle of that cost summary. For the zinc column cladding and crown, 551 odd. For zinc rain screen cladding to spandrel panels, 707 odd. And aluminium rain screen cladding generally, 109 odd £1,000 each respectively. And that gives us a total, on our calculations, of about £1.2 million. So we go from £546,000 quoted by KME to 1.2 million odd £1,000 quoted in total to Ryden. Can you explain in rough terms how you got from 546 odd thousand to 1.2 million in total?
Well, basically, the cladding quote was for the panels and sort of brackets, but then we just add on to insulation and some cladding rails as well, and also the installation of the product as well,
Right.
plus the overheads and markup from Harley.
Yes.
On that, so that would account for the extra cost.
I see. So your price of 1.2 million odd in total for that was an on-the-wall price.
That's right, yes.
Right. Whereas the quotation from KME was what they call X works, but already fabricated.
That's right, yes.
But just for the materials.
That's right,
I
yes.
follow. Now, can we go back to your witness statement, please? Page 4, paragraph 16. You say there, decisions on specification changes were made by Studio E and communicated to Harley via Ryden. My instructions to provide costings for such changes would come to me from Ray Bailey or Mark Harris, although ultimately we would provide alternative costings for whatever material the architects wanted to use, provided that it was something that was achievable and fit for the intended purpose. You can see those words there that you use. Would you play any part in assessing whether the products were fit for their intended purpose?
No, I wouldn't.
Did anyone at Harley have that particular role?
Again, it would have been probably Ray Bailey or Daniel Anketell-Jones in their technical role.
If Mark Harris or Ray Bailey told you to price a product with a particular product, did you understand that it had been checked in order to make sure that it was suitable?
Yes, I would have done. Yes.
Who did you think would do that checking?
Either Ray Bailey or Daniel Anketell-Jones.
I see. So was it your expectation that anything in the NBS specification would be checked by Ray Bailey or Daniel Anketell-Jones for its suitability for application on this project?
That's right, yes.
Right. And by fit for intended purpose, can you explain what you mean?
Really, just if it's actually suitable for its use on the building.
Did that include fitness from a fire safety perspective?
If that was the purpose for it, but again, if it was actually for that purpose, it would obviously have to be fit for that purpose.
When you say if it was for that purpose, can you just explain?
For example, if like there was a fire exit on a building and it needed to be a fire-rated screen, a curtain wall screen, it had to be fit for that purpose.
Was it your expectation that any particular product for application on the project would be checked by either Ray Bailey or Daniel Anketell-Jones?
That's right, yes, it would be.
For fire safety?
I suppose so, yes, it would be all part of it.
Now, at paragraph 31 of your statement, if we can go to that, please. You'll see on page 8 there that you say, I have been an estimator for over 20 years, pricing projects involving curtain walling, windows and cladding. Although I had not used these particular products before, I had previously worked on projects where other ACM products, such as a Leucobond, were used. When I worked for Astrolite, they used a fabricator called Booth Muri Limited, and they mainly worked with the Leucobond. Now, I think you're referring there, are you, to Raynobond ACM with a PE core when you say these particular products?
That's right, yes.
Are you also referring, when you say these particular products, to the KME Proteus HR?
Yes, as well, yes.
So you've never used that before either?
No.
I see. What about Celotex RS5000 insulation?
Again, I think I was actually saying in my statement of 33 that I can't remember if I actually worked on a project where that was used. But again, at tender stage or estimated stage, insulation is fairly generic, so it would have been decided after a contract was won and actually materials ordered.
Very well. Well, we'll come back to RS5000 shortly, I think. You say that, as you do here, that you had worked with a Leucobond products. On those previous projects where you had done so, were they a Leucobond ACM panels with a PE core or another kind of core?
I can't recall, I'm afraid.
Right.
Sorry.
Were you aware from the involvement you'd had previously with a Leucobond that a Leucobond ACM panels came with an FR, fire retardant core?
No.
You weren't? What about a mineral core? Were you aware that a Leucobond panels came with that?
No, I just thought that Leucobond was just one core, and that was it.
One core,
Yeah.
and that was it? And that was PE, was it?
There wasn't a choice between fire-rated or non-fire-rated as such.
Right, so just PE as a
That's right, yes.
as a single product. Now, if, as you say, these products that you've identified were new to you, did it occur to you that it was even more important to familiarise yourself with them, and particularly their performance in a fire?
No, because it wasn't my role at the company to actually check those items.
Right. And just again, to be absolutely crystal clear, whose role at the time did you think that was?
It would have been, again, Ray Bailey or Daniel Anketell-Jones.
I want to ask you some questions about the regulatory requirements, but these may not take long. In general, were you yourself familiar with Schedule 1 to the building regulations?
No.
Right. Would it follow that you weren't therefore familiar with Part B, fire safety?
That's right,
No.
yes.
Had you received any general training on fire safety within clad buildings, either before or during your time at Harley?
No.
And do I take it also that you were not familiar with the CWCT guidance or technical notes published by the
That's
CWCT?
right,
And similarly, the BCA, the Building Control Alliance?
Yeah.
Right. Then let's turn to the NBS specification. If you go, please, to SIG 50139, please. We can see an email from you on the 11th of December to Matthew Irving at KME. We've looked at that before. And we can see in it that you forwarded to him a number of documents. And one of those, if we look at your email in the second paragraph and at the attachments, is the NBS specification. Now, the version then in circulation was dated the 29th of November 2013, and I don't need to go to that. But do you remember when you first saw the NBS specification prior to sending this email to Mr. Irving?
It probably would have been when we received the tender inquiries in December.
I see. Do you remember who you received it from?
It would have been the main contractors,
I see.
Rydens,
I see.
etc.
I see. So when you say the NBS specification, which you're sending on to KME, you don't know which particular main contractor had supplied that one to you. They were all the same.
No, I would have just extracted that part of the NBS and sent it to KME.
I see. Now let's look at the NBS specification. This is the one dated the 29th of November 2013. So this would have been the one current at the time of this email. It's SEA 50153, please. And we can see, if you look at the middle of page 2, that this is the version dated the 29th of November, as I say. You see that? And if we go then on to page 64, we can see on 64, clause 120, types of rain screen cladding, and it sets out the specification which required pricing for Proteus panels supplied by KME Architectural Solutions. Do you see that?
Yes, I do.
Yeah. Now, if we go down to page, or back at page 63, clause 11, under H92 rain screen cladding, information to be provided with tender, you can see that it says, in addition to the cladding specified in the below clauses 120 and 123, submit comparative supply and install costs per square metre of the whole cladding system for the following alternative materials. And then we can see what the alternatives are. There's Reno Bond in 3 finishes, Aluco Bond, Spectra Secura, and zinc, quartz zinc. Do you see that?
Yes.
And then that's in addition to the Proteus panel, which we saw specified at clause 120. Now, if we go to page 63, at the top of stay on page 63, at the top of that page, you can see that it says that one of the matters to be read with the preliminaries in the second bullet point was that the manufacturers noted within the specification were indicative, and then it says this, and may be substituted with similar or equal alternatives. When you got this document in December 2013, did you note what it said there, that the manufacturers may be substituted with similar or equal alternatives?
I possibly did. That's like a fairly standard clause in NBS documents.
I see. And what did you understand by the word indicative?
It's like a guide, the sort of product that the architect wants to use.
Right. And when it says the manufacturers noted within the specification are indicative, did you think that applied only to the KME Proteus HR rain screen, or also to the alternatives, the Reno Bond, the Aluco Bond, and the zinc?
I don't think I had an opinion on that at that time, really.
I see. Looking at the phrase similar or equal, what did you understand by that?
That normally means that the product's got to be of similar performance.
Similar performance. So did that mean that where a product was to be substituted, it had to be of similar or equal performance standard to what was stipulated?
That's right, yes.
And where it says substituted, what did you understand could be substituted for what?
Sorry, in what way?
Well, did you understand that for example, the Raynaud bond identified in clause 11 could be substituted for the Proteus, provided it was of similar or equal performance standard?
Not as such, because the Proteus was the main product and the Raynaud bond was the alternative, so it would be the other way around, really.
Right. So to what products would the qualification, to your understanding, similar or equal, apply to?
Probably from the phrasing in the documents, any product, really.
I see. So any product not within this specification at all?
Sorry.
Any product completely outside this specification?
No, it's referring to the products in the specification, and obviously there are, could be substituted by other manufacturers.
Right. Can I just see if I can get your understanding of the comparative performances as between the zinc Proteus on the one hand and the alternative Raynaud bond on the other? Looking at the expression maybe substituted with similar or equal alternatives, did you form any view at the time as to whether Raynaud bond would perform the same as the KME Proteus HR?
No, I can't comment on that because, as I say, I've got no technical training of those products.
Right. In respect of all of these rain screen materials that you were being asked to cost, did you take any steps to ensure that they were suitable for the use in an external wall construction above 18 metres in height?
No, other than just passing on the document to either the manufacturers or Ray Bailey and Daniel Anketell-Jones to actually look at a technical point of view.
Right. And again, does the same apply in relation to the insulation material that is specified elsewhere in this document?
That's right, the whole document, basically,
Right.
yes.
Did you discuss these materials with anybody when costing them?
What, at Harley? Or?
Within Harley? Yes.
Possibly, yes.
Do you know who?
I probably either Mark Harris, Ray Bailey, or Daniel.
Right. Do you have a specific recollection of that, or?
No, because it happens on most projects. So
I see. Can you go to paragraph 22 of your statement, please, on page 6? I think you say there, beyond that, I'm unable to comment as to the manufacture of either Raynaud bond ACM or Celotex because my role was not a technical or design role, and so I wasn't required to know the full details of the manufacture or composition of these products. Does that tell us that you weren't able to assess whether they were fit for purpose, at least in terms of fire safety?
that's right, because it wasn't my role at the company to do those checks.
Okay. Can we go back then to clause 11 of the NBS specification that we looked at a moment ago, SEA 50153 at page 63. This is the NBS specification of the 29th of November, again, not the final version that came out in January that we've been looking at most of the time in this inquiry. And we can see here on this page under clause 11, information to be provided with tender, that you were required to provide a price for Raynaud bond metallic standard and non-standard. What did you understand was the difference between standard and non-standard?
It's basically the finish of the metallic finish, either standard or non-standard. I think they have a range of colours which are standard colours, and then you get non-standard colours which are sometimes costs for costs on those.
Can I ask you to look at the BBA certificate for Raynaud bond panels? This is at HAR 50934, please. This is the BBA certificate number 08/4510, dated first issue 14th of January 2008. Did you see this document when considering how to quote for these panels, the Raynaud bond ACM panels?
No.
You didn't. Did you ever see this document during your work on the Grenfell Tower project?
I believe it was provided by Alcoa on request from the architect later on, but again it would just be, I was just copied in on an email and the document was sent on to the architect.
Yes, that's the 23rd of April 2014. sent by Debbie French to Mark Harris. Does that ring a bell with you?
Yes, it does.
Right, and you say you were copied in on that. Did you read it when you received it?
No.
You didn't. What did you do with it?
I was just copied into it, so I didn't actually. I just filed it, and as say Mark Harris sent it on, I believe, or it may have been myself. I can't remember.
Why did you think you were being copied in on it?
Because again, I was the point of contact for the pricing of Grenfell Tower, so I was copied in on all documents at that point.
Did it occur to you that one of the reasons why you were copied in on it is that you should read it?
No, because again, my role wasn't the company. It wasn't a technical role, so I would not have to read that document.
What was the point of it being sent to you if you weren't to read it?
Again, because it was just keeping me in the loop, basically, and I kept a file of all correspondence on the project.
Right. Now, I know you didn't read this document at the time, as you tell us. Perhaps there's not a lot of point showing this to you, but the general question is, were you aware, even at April 2014, when this document was sent to you in copy, that there were two different Rainabond ACM products, one with a standard PE core and one with an FR, or fire retardant core?
No, I wasn't aware.
Right. Can we then look at SEA 402275, please? This is a document we looked at earlier on this morning. It was the 18th of October outlined budget for the external envelope. Budget costs, cassette rain screen. At this stage, you can see that cassette is being quoted for. Do you know why cassette was stipulated at this stage rather than face fixed? Or rather budgeted for rather than face fixed?
No, I don't know.
You don't. If you go to page 2, we looked at the exclusion for fire-rated products, and you said that was for curtain walling and windows. Did you understand, from your involvement, that there'd been an exclusion from the budget for all fire-rated products?
In what regard? What?
Well, fire-rated products in the external wall construction.
I wasn't aware. No.
You weren't? Okay. Nobody ever told you to budget or cost on the basis that fire-rated products, for example, for the rain screen or for the insulation, were not to be costed.
What, on this particular document or in future projects?
On this project.
On this project, no.
Right. Can I then go to CEP 50267? And I'm going to ask you some questions about your seeking of a quotation from CEP.
Okay.
This is an email of the 21st of January 2014 from Jeff Blades at CEP to you, copied to Mark Harris, and he provides in which he provides a quotation for the fabrication of the cladding panels, and he attaches a quote.
Okay.
It looks from our documents that you only approached CEP for a quotation for fabrication. Is that right?
I believe so, yes.
Why is that?
Because CEP was the fabricator Harley used for the rain screen cladding products.
For rain screen cladding products, is that all rain screen cladding products, regardless of whether it was Rainabond or Alucobond?
I believe
Or others?
that it was probably Alucobond, Rainabond, and maybe some other cladding products.
Right. So CEP was the fabricator of choice for Harley. Is that what you're saying?
That's right, for those products, yes.
For those products. You say for those products. Can I just be clear what you mean?
I believe they obviously, there's products they didn't actually fabricate, so they couldn't actually provide prices
Right.
for those.
Would it be normal only to approach one fabricator on a cladding job?
Not particularly, no.
So why on this one?
I think at that point, I was new to the company, and you rely on being told who the companies that the your employer uses. So I was told that CEP would provide a price for these, so that's where I went to.
I see. Who told you that?
Would have been either Ray Bailey or Mark Harris.
Okay. Did they say why you should approach CEP and nobody
No,
else?
really, it's just you get a list of suppliers that Harley used over the years, and that's the company you went to.
And you didn't question that?
No, because most times, even in my previous employment, you build up a level of trust with certain suppliers. They deliver on time. They're trustworthy in terms of providing a product. So you just really go with those, the ones that you can you can trust basically.
Did CEP only fabricate ACM panels?
In terms of cladding, or
In terms of the rain screen? I'm sorry, yeah. When it comes to rain screen panels, did CEP only fabricate ACM, or did they do other
I
panels?
believe that the other panels might be a sort of can't remember. It might be actually a HPL panel, I think it is, but
Right.
it's really ACM was the one we obviously got quoted on this.
HPL being high pressure laminate.
Yes, that's right. Yes.
And so far as zinc is concerned, I think you said earlier that would be fabricated by KME itself.
That's right.
So that
yes.
wouldn't need to go to CEP.
I don't believe they actually did that product anyway. So
Right. So would it be right that by only approaching CEP for a quote, you were essentially providing a price which assumed the job was going to be ACM? The rain screen for Grenfell Tower was going to be ACM?
no, because the ACM was a alternative to the Proteus at that point.
Right. Can we look at the email chain under which you requested a quote? It's CEP 50267, please. And I'd like to start at page 3. CEP 50267. And if we can go down to page 3, we can see that at the bottom of the chain there's an email from Jeff Blades to you, dated 20th of December 2013. Morning, Mike. Following my telephone conversation with Mark Harris yesterday, could you please forward your window and curtain wall schedule? With regards the rain screen overcladding, we are to offer our system based on a cassette tray and face-fixed ACM, i.e. Rayno bond. To this, could you please forward elevation drawings and any other information you feel is relevant? Well, you were made aware of that telephone conversation on the 19th of December? The day before this
Other than
email?
just seeing it in the email there, I don't recall the conversation.
Right. Do you know what Mr. Harris said to Mr. Blades?
No, I don't.
To your knowledge, did Mark Harris instruct Jeff Blades to offer a system, as he says, based on a cassette tray and face-fixed ACM, i.e. Rayno bond?
I don't know, other than reading it in the email there.
Did you instruct Mr. Blades to offer such a system?
No, because I think probably an email further on, you just sort of scroll up.
Right.
But basically, he says cassette tray and face fix, so I think that's what he offered.
Do you know, because you received this at the time, do you know why Mark Harris had told Jeff Blades that the ACM to be used was Rayno bond and not any of the other alternatives set out in the NBS specification?
I don't know.
Did it strike you as odd that he had narrowed down the quotation that he was seeking only to that product and not, for example, to include Aluco bond as an alternative?
Not really, no. At that point, I was, say, new to the company, so I don't think I'd met Jeff Blades, so I didn't actually know what products CP fabricated, so it wouldn't have struck me as unusual.
When you read the words, "we are to offer our system," did that strike you as a reference to an instruction, essentially, from Harley to Mr. Blades, that the quotation that was being sought was very specific and restricted to cassette and face-fixed, i.e. Rayno bond?
Not really, no.
Can we then scroll up and look at pages 2 and 3 side by side? And if we look at the bottom of page 2 and at the top of page 3, we got the bottom of page 2, we can see that it's an email from you dated the 6th of January 2014 back to Jeff Blades, and over the top of page 3 you say,
Sorry, I can't see those.
I know, there it is, top of page 3. Hi, Jeff. Do you see that now?
Yes, I do.
You say, hi, Jeff. Further to our telephone conversation this morning, please find attached schedules and NBS specifications for the curtain wall and windows. I have also included the NBS specification for the rain screen and the elevation drawings. I will also send you a link for further drawings in Dropbox. If you have any further queries, then please contact me. Did you have a conversation with Jeff Blades on the morning of the 6th of January 2014, as appears from this email?
I obviously did, yeah, but it says in the email.
Right. Do you remember that conversation at all?
No, I don't.
Do you remember whether you told him, or do you have a recollection specifically of telling him what to quote for in respect of the rain screen?
No, I don't remember. Again, he said previously what he was going to be quoting for, so I didn't really raise that with him.
Right. Now, you'd sent him the entire NBS specification and the elevation drawings, and we've already seen that the NBS specification requested quotes for 4 rain screen products, both Proteus, Rainabond, Alucobond, and Court Zinc by VM Zinc. So were you expecting him to provide quotations in respect of all of those, or at least Rainabond, Alucobond, and Court Zinc at this stage?
Probably, well, whatever he could quote for, really. If he was only quoted for a Rainabond, it would have just been that.
If we go then to the quote of the 21st of January 2014, which is what he responds to after a chaser from you, which I think we can see on page 2. Can we go to that? It's CEP 50268. This is the formal quotation from CEP addressed to you at Harley, dated the 21st of January 2014. And if we look at page 1, it says, in the first paragraph, thank you for your inquiry ref the above project, which is Grenfell Tower, and we have pleasure in confirming our quotation for the design, fabrication and supply only of aluminium windows and rain screen overcladding as laid out below. And then in the 5th paragraph down, rain screen overcladding. Do you see that?
I do, yes.
He says panels are to be manufactured utilising 4mm Rainabond ACM. I just want to focus on the words are to be manufactured. Do you know why, despite the fact that you had sent Mr. Blades the whole of the NBS specification, which had the 4 products, Proteus and then the 3 alternatives in it,
yes.
Clause 11, as we've seen, do you know why Jeff Blades only provided a quote for the Rainabond ACM product?
I assume it's because that's the only product he actually fabricated in terms of ACM rain screen.
Is it not because he had been told to do so, as we've seen from the 20th of December email? We are to.
I don't know if he was told that or not. I just assume that's what he was. That's his product he fabricates.
You see, it says here, panels are to be manufactured utilising 4mm Rainabond ACM. When you saw this, did it not strike you as odd that he was under the impression that he was only to quote for 4mm Rainabond ACM and not any of the other products referred to in the NBS specification?
No, it didn't strike me as strange.
It didn't strike you as strange. Why didn't it strike you as strange?
Because that's obviously the product he only fabricates that type of ACM.
So did you understand that he was limiting himself to quoting for a Rainabond ACM because that was the only product he fabricated?
That's right, yes.
Did anyone tell you that?
I can't remember if they did or not, but that's my memory of it. Basically, that's what the product he fabricated.
Right. Did you have a conversation with him about his capability to fabricate other products?
It's possible I did, but I can't recall that.
Right. But I think we know that CEP also fabricated a Alucobond. Did it not cross your mind that when he was restricting himself to Rainabond, that was over-restrictive, and you should ask him, well, can you please quote for a Alucobond as well?
Well, you've just told me now he quotes for Alucobonds. That's probably that first time I knew that anyway.
I see.
Or at that time I wouldn't have known that.
All right. It looks from his wording, and obviously we can ask him about this, but panels are to be manufactured. It looks from that as if a final decision had been made already to use Raynobond ACM as the fabricated panels, as opposed to Alucobond or any other panels requiring fabrication. Does that accord with your recollection, that a final decision had been made?
No, at that stage it was as an alternative to the process anyway.
Were you asked to obtain quotations for Alucobond?
I can't recall, I'm afraid.
What about VM zinc?
It's possible. Again, I can't recall.
Right. Given that you didn't approach any fabricators other than CEP, as you've told us, and given that you only asked CEP, or at least led CEP to understand that it was only to quote for Raynobond, does it follow that in fact there were no quotations sought from fabricators for Alucobond?
Again, I can't recall.
You can't recall. And would the same apply to the VM zinc as well?
That's right, yes.
From your own recollection, is it fair to say that Harley was pushing the Raynobond product and was seeking quotations based on its proposed use at Grenfell?
No, I don't think that at all.
Right. Can I ask you to look at CEP 50273? Now, this is an email from Mark Harris to Jeff Blades of the 29th of January, copied to you. And he says, "Hi, Jeff, just to let you know, the main contractor tender return date has been further extended by another week, 14th of Feb. So glad we pulled out all the stops to get a price back. Were you working against a tight timescale to prepare the tender for submission?"
Not particularly. It was just about usual for those sort of projects.
Right. Did you feel under pressure to get the quotations out as soon as possible?
No more than usual, really.
No more than usual, but nonetheless some degree of pressure.
Yeah, that's usual. Yeah.
Now let's look at Harley's quotation itself, please, a little bit more closely. This is at HAR 30010151. This is your statement at paragraph 13, and you say here, paragraph 13, on page 4, you say a quotation, paragraph 13, a quotation was produced by myself and agreed with Ray Bailey and Mark Harris. The quotation was sent to all potential main contractors. Ryden were ultimately awarded the contract, and I assisted Mark Harris with providing additional costings and cost analysis. You see that? And you go on to say, by further cost analysis, I mean breaking down the costs given in the quotation in further detail so that Ryden could see more clearly, could see more detail of exactly what the costs given in the quotation consisted of. Now, can I ask you to turn back to Harley's quotation? Or turn to it. It's at RYD 402606. RYD 402606. This is an email from you to Katie Bachelier of the 29th of January, a copy to Simon Lawrence, say same day, and you attach the quotation to that for Grenfell. Was this quotation in the same form as that which you provided to the other main contractors bidding for this project at that time?
Yes, exactly the same document.
I see. Do you know what process you'd gone through to reach the final figures in the tender?
In what way, sorry?
Well, what process had you gone through in order to reach the final figures in the quotation
Well, I would
document?
have measured all the elements on the project, obtained prices or used historic prices, compiled the tender sum and compiled the document as well, and checked it with Ray and Mark Harris before it actually went out.
Right. Now let's look at the quotation itself. It's at RYD 402607. There it is. We saw it earlier. And we'll come back to it in a bit more detail now. If we go to page 2, this is a letter signed by you to Ryden, same day, 29th of January 2014. And it says there that the offer, in the second paragraph you see, includes for the design, supply and fix of a complete envelope package, all in accordance with the client's requirement documents issued by yourselves. Now, we know that part of Harley's tender, as we can see, was for the design of the facade, yes?
That's right, yes.
Now, if we go to page 9, we can, in this document, I think we've already seen part of this, because I showed you this earlier this morning in the middle. We can see that the total figure for the project, or so far as Harley was concerned as potential subcontractor, was £3.2 odd million, yes?
That's right, yes.
And that was on the basis of zinc rain screen cladding, yes?
That's right, yes.
Yes. And that was before any alternatives by way of product or any value engineering was applied, wasn't it?
That's right, yes.
Looking at the rates there, do you know where they came from?
All the rates, they would have come from prices obtained from material suppliers and built up internally at Harley.
I see. And do you know where the measurements had come from?
From myself.
I see. So you'd done the measurements based on what? The drawings?
Based on the drawings, yes.
I see. And if we look at page 10, next page, alternatives and options, at the top of the page there, you can see that halfway down that page, there's rain screen cladding as a section, and we can see that there are various prices set out for as quotation and then alternatives. Were the products that you set out there derived from the NBS specification, do you think?
Yes, the Proteus and the CGL cladding was, and obviously the Raynobond and the Alucobond as well,
Right.
the alternatives.
And we can see that you provided prices for both Raynobond and Alucobond rain screen cladding,
That's right, yeah.
with different prices for face fixed and cassette, although they're identical, £240 per square metre for cassette and £195 per square metre for face fixed. Where did you take those prices from?
From memory, probably the Raynobond would have been from Jeff Blades' costs.
Right.
And the Alucobond, because the Alucobond and Raynobond are very similar in cost, we would have put the same cost in there at that stage because there was no finishes specified at that point, so we just put the same cost in.
I see.
Just as a guide.
So you didn't actually ask Alucobond to provide a specific number?
No.
I see. So the Alucobond prices there were an assumption, were they?
That's it, based on historic costs at Harley.
Right. And do you know, or did you know at the time, who was going to fabricate the Alucobond cassettes?
No.
Now, we can see that there's no VM zinc product included in these options, although it was listed, as we've seen, as one of the alternatives in the NBS specification. Do you know why that is?
I don't recall, I'm afraid.
Do you recall any discussion with Mr. Harris or Mr. Bailey, Ray Bailey, about excluding the VM zinc as an alternative cost or price for the rain screen?
I'm afraid I can't remember any discussion on that.
Do you remember whether it was Harley's aim to make sure that Raynobond ACM was chosen out of all the options provided in the NBS spec?
No, I don't recall any discussions on that.
Right. I mean, we've seen from your evidence this morning and from other evidence that the only fabricator who was approached was CEP, that the only quotation from them was for Raynobond ACM. The only figures that are quoted for the alternative are based on Raynobond as firm figures. You hadn't approached Alucobond, and hadn't got any prices for a liquor bond. In the light of that, would you accept that it is fair to say that the use of Rayner bond panels was a foregone conclusion?
No, because at that stage they were just an alternative to the Proteus zinc. So it wasn't they were just there as a alternative system.
Mr. Chairman, is it a convenient moment for a break?
Yes, I think it is, Mr. Millett. Thank you very much. Mr. Albiston, we're going to have a break now.
Okay.
We'll come back at 20 to 12, please. And while you're out of the room, please don't talk to anyone about your evidence or anything related to it.
Okay.
All right? So you'd like to go with the usher, she'll look after you. Right, 20 to 12 then, thank you.
can just go straight to value engineering.
Yes. Would you ask Mr. Albiston to come back in, please? Thank you. All right, ready to carry on?
Thank you. Yes.
Very good, thank you. Yes, Mr.
Mr. Albiston, can I ask you to turn to your statement, please, at paragraph 35? Before I do that, before that comes up on the screen, I've been asked just to revisit something I put to you earlier, which was the 18th of October budget and the authorship of that document.
That's right, yes.
18th of October 2013. Now, I just want to put accurately to you what Mr. Harris said about that on day 34 at page 65, line 23. And his evidence to the inquiry was that it was more likely to have been the estimator, I believe. And I then said, what, Mike Albiston? And then at page 66, line 1, yes, that's correct. And then he goes on to say at line 5, it's more likely to have been him, so I couldn't absolutely categorically say it wasn't me, but looking at that document, that's more likely to have been him. And then he says, when I asked him, did you have any discussions with Mike Albiston or any input into its creation? And he says, I'm sure there were discussions, yeah. Now, just looking at his evidence, is what he says there correct, or is your recollection different?
No, it's different, I believe. And I believe probably it's just the passage of time, excuse me, that he probably just doesn't remember when I actually started the company. As I say, it was beginning of October. So at that point, I was working on other projects. I wasn't involved in those budgets. So I think it's just really it's just memory from that time.
Yeah.
But obviously, further on, probably a year on, I would have been involved in those sort of those documents.
Yes, I see. Can we then go to your witness statement at paragraph 35 on page 8 that I've just referred you to? And you say here, any changes to materials had to be agreed by the architect. Although some changes in materials were proposed or suggested by Harley, these were nevertheless ultimately subject to approval by the architects. Who were the architects that you're referring to here?
Studio E.
And once Ryden was appointed the main contractor, did you anticipate a discussion about materials between Harley and Studio E in the event of any change which would lead to the ultimate approval by Studio E?
I believe they would have been discussed at that point, yes.
And how did you come to that understanding?
Because it's usual on these sort of projects where there are changes that has to go through the architect.
That's, you say, usual on these sorts of projects. Did you have any specific conversation with anybody within Harley about what you should do, where there was to be a change?
Sorry, in what way?
Well, did anybody tell you, did anybody at Harley, that is, tell you that where there was to be a change in materials, you should have, or there should be, a discussion with Studio E or with Ryden?
No, it was just industry practice, really, that any changes would be agreed by the architects.
Did you, in fact, in the end, ever have a discussion with Studio E whereby they approved a change in material?
No, because after the contract was won by Ryden's and appointed Harley, I didn't actually have any discussions with Studio E or Ryden's on product changes.
I see. Do you know whether anybody else at Harley had discussions with Studio E whereby they approved a change in materials?
I don't know if they did or not.
I see. Can we look at RYD 403315, please? This is an email from Mark Harris to Steve Blake of the 14th of March 2014, which attached proposed value engineering options. And you can see that it was copied to you, as well as to Simon Lawrence and Katie Bachelier. And let's look at it. It says, please find the first round of VE options attached for Grenfell Tower. This has been presented to show the value of the compliant package with VE cost options below. The cladding is shown with 4 options for the main zinc areas. At the risk of stating the obvious, the cladding savings are not cumulative. Only one of the 4 options can be selected. Now, looking at the date, Mr. Albiston, this was after Harley's quotation had been submitted, wasn't it?
That's right, yes.
Some time after, actually, about 6 weeks or so.
Yes.
Yeah. Were you involved in producing the value engineering options that Mr. Harris was referring to? And
I was, yes.
you were. Do you know who asked you to do that?
Within Harley or externally?
Well, let's start with Harley.
It would have been Mark Harris.
Right. Did anybody externally ask you to do it?
Not directly. It would have been through Mark. It would have been Rydens who would have asked that.
I follow. Now, we'll go to the attachment in just a moment. Before we do, sticking with the email, in the 4th paragraph down, Mark Harris says, we have included options for both face-fixed as used at Camden and secret-fixed cassette, but again would comment that the architect was none too keen on face-fixed when discussed. I would be surprised if they would accept Reynobond with the standard paint finish. However, we have included it as one of the options on the basis that a significant cost saving can be made. Although the attached states standard silver finish, any of the standard ACM colours would be available at the same rate. Hope this is sufficient for your meeting on Monday. Did you yourself explore any value engineering options in respect of a zinc product, Mr. Albiston?
I don't believe I did, no.
Why is that?
I wasn't asked to.
Right. Did it occur to you to take that up with Mark Harris and say, well, we should be looking at alternative costings for zinc?
No, because it wasn't my position to actually make those suggestions.
Right. Did you yourself think about going back to KME and asking for a price reduction?
No, I didn't.
And I take it from that answer that there was no discussion between you and Mark Harris or anybody else at Harley about going back to KME and asking for
Again, I can't recall. We may have actually contacted KME about a price reduction, but I can't recall a conversation.
At the time that ACM was raised as an alternative option to zinc, what assessment did you, or to your knowledge anybody else at Harley, done to determine whether ACM complied with ADB, approved document B, as the choice of material to provide the surface of the external wall on the building?
Sorry, can you repeat the question? Sorry.
Yes. When ACM was raised as an alternative to zinc, did you do any assessment, or did anybody at Harley do any assessment for compliance with approved document B?
Right, I didn't do any assessments. It's possible that somebody else in a technical position would have done that.
Right. Can we then look at the attached document, which is at RYD 403316, please? Do you know who created this document?
That was myself.
That was you. Now, all the proposed cladding savings which are set out here refer only to Reynobond products. There's no Alucobond and no VM Zinc, for example. Why was that?
Again, I would have been told to do that by either Ray Bailey or Mark Harris. That was the product we were just using on those alternatives.
When you say told to do that, do you mean told only to look for reductions on Reynobond products?
I think because at that point there was discussions with Reynobond over the particular finishes, like the zinc type of finish. So that was the route we was going down at that point.
Right. And does that explain why you didn't go back to Alucobond to say, can we actually have a good price, or a price that was better than what Reynobond were offering you?
That's right, yes.
Do you remember where you got these revised prices from?
Probably it would have with Reynobond. It would have been from CEP.
You say, do you remember that?
Not exactly, but that would have been the basis of those costs.
I see. So these costs would have included fabrication?
That's right, yes.
Yes. Now, if you go to your statement, please. You see that you say there at paragraph 31, page 8. I've been an estimator over 20 years, and we saw that earlier. And we also saw this reference earlier to Booth Muri. Is it fair to say that you were familiar with the Luco bond and had used that successfully with other companies on other buildings?
Yes, I had, yes.
Did you raise any concerns with Mark Harris about not using a Luco bond or not seeking quotations for a Luco bond as an alternative?
No.
And why is that?
I didn't think it was an issue.
Did you have a feel for whether, when looking at value engineering, a Luco bond might provide even more favourable reductions than Renault bond?
It's possible, but from my experience, the Luca bond and Renault bond are very similar costs. So there was not much to choose between them, really.
Now, you said a moment ago that you might have got these revised prices from CEP. Do you remember having a discussion with Mr. Blades or anybody else at CEP about these revised prices?
No, because I think the value engineering options were based on actual measures of all the cladding areas. So it would have been based on his original quotation that he provided.
Right. Do you know what accounts for the reduction in each case? If it helps, we can look back at the document. Perhaps we should do that. If you look at RYD 403316, we'll just focus on, for example, the £576,000 odd reduction in relation to aluminium face fixed, Renault bond aluminium face fixed. Do you know how it was that figure was arrived at?
Yes, it would be comparing the cost for the Proteus zinc cladding against the Renault bond and the difference in those.
Yes, and given that this is value engineering, can you account for the increase in saving or difference between the two?
Sorry, the saving between which, sorry?
Between the zinc, the Proteus zinc, as you said a moment ago, which was the comparator, and
right. Well, the Proteus was a more expensive product than the Renault bond, so that's the difference in cost.
Yes. I'm sorry, maybe we're at cross purposes. Yeah. I'm asking you how these precise figures were arrived at. Do you know?
As I said before, it was based on a cost for the Proteus as we used in the compliant bid, and then reworked using Renault bond prices, and that would have been the saving, because Renault bonds are a more, a less expensive product than Proteus. There was a difference in cost.
Were these prices that you were offering not reductions on the prices that were contained in the Harley quote of 29th of January?
Because the compliant bid of the 3 million is as the quotation. Yeah. The savings are sort of more accurate figures, because in the quotation it was just square metre rates, which didn't really sort of mean a lot in the scheme of the job. So these are more based on actual areas. So these figures weren't actually given before as VE options.
I see. So, right. Well, let's just look at that. We can't find any trace of any document in which you went back to CEP and asked them about revised prices before quoting these to Ryden. Is that because you didn't need to go back to CEP?
That's right, yes.
They were simple comparators.
That's right,
between
yes.
what had previously been quoted, yeah, and the zinc.
Yes.
Yes, I follow. Can we go to RYD 4916, RYD 4916, please? This is an email from Simon Lawrence of the 22nd of May 2014 to Claire Williams at the TMO. And he says, in the first paragraph, good news hot off the press is that what we believe to be a more expensive ACM cladding finish, natural aluminium, isn't going to be. The manufacturers have confirmed that they are willing to supply it at the same price as the other ranges previously discussed. Therefore, the savings stay the same as per the attached 293,368 for cassette or 376,175 face fixed. Were you aware that Ryden had not passed on to the TMO, their client, the full savings from using ACM that you were offering?
No, I wasn't aware.
Can we look at HAR 50931, please? This is an email copied to you, 22nd of April 2014, from Mark Harris to Simon Lawrence. Simon, he says, by far the easiest way to respond is for me to forward a copy of Bruce's email to Deb French at Alcoa, the Rainabond lady, for comment regarding cost. I'll do that straight away. And then in the third paragraph he says, I would prefer to try to stick with Rainabond if possible. Nothing wrong with the Luca bond, of course, but I'm not sure we can manage the cost so well if we go that route. Do you know why Mr. Harris wanted to stick with Rainabond?
No, I don't.
Can you comment on his professed reason there, which is managing the cost?
No, I don't.
Did you share his concerns that you saw in this email regarding Ryden's ability to manage, or rather Harley's ability to manage the costs if the client selected the Aluka bond product?
I can't recall any sort of anything on that. Obviously, I saw the emails that was copied to me, but I don't recall anything crossing my mind when I saw that.
Now, can we turn to CEP 3051297? This is an email from Mark Harris to Jeff Blades, just 2 days later, 24th of April 2014, copied to you and Ray Bailey. Morning, Jeff. Just to place a note on record regarding the conversations between Debbie French and myself with regard to Grenfell Tower. And he goes on to say the rates from Alcoa, specific to the Grenfell project for brushed look and effects colours are stated below. The colours shown as offering maximum saving against the original natural zinc will all be supplied at the same rate as Alcoa's standard colour range. As stated, this is a special for Grenfell Tower. Is it fair to say that the value engineering exercise that you were involved in, as we've seen from the VE options spreadsheet the 14th of March, focused on obtaining an appropriate Rainabond product from Deborah French at Alcoa?
That's right, yes.
To the best of your recollection, did Harley, and you particularly, only consider the Rainabond product for value engineering options?
I think at that point, because of discussions with Rainabond regarding finishes, it was very much going down the Rainabond route at that point. So I think it was sort of focused on that. Because you start going down the Aluka bond route, there's other finishes, and it just puts a whole lot more different, finishes into the mix, really.
Right. So when you say very much going down the Rainabond route, does that really tell us that by this stage, although perhaps no formal decision had been made, so far as Harley was concerned, it was going to be Rainabond?
It probably was, yes.
Yes. Can I ask you to look at HAR 405692? This is an email 2 days earlier, actually, 22nd of April 2014, from Mark Harris to Deborah French. And he makes the same point in the third paragraph. He says, I need some guidance regarding prices. We are trying to stick with what I would call standard Rainabond rates, and I believe we spoke about certain colours. And then if you look at the bottom of that, he says, if you could respond in terms of which fall within the standard price range and which fall outside, rather than quoting actual cost figures, I can then forward it straight on to all concerned. Now, again, you were copied in on this email. Did you understand that had the email contained the actual prices, Mr. Harris would not have wanted to forward that straight on?
That's right, yes.
And that's because Harley wouldn't want the architect to know the actual prices?
That's right, that's usual anyway.
Right. Is that because the cost saving or uplift inherent in your prices was something that you didn't want the architect to know?
It's really just obviously the build-up of cost, because the architect can't just buy the product from a supplier. He has to obviously come through a fabricator and a installer. So obviously we've got add-on costs on that as well.
Yes. Now, can I ask you about the KME Proteus product? If we can go to RYD 4085, please. This is an email from you to Simon Lawrence of the 30th of April 2014. you see that? It's from you to
Yes,
Simon
yeah,
Lawrence,
yeah.
30th of April 2014. And you attach the Proteus HR brochure, among other documents, the NEDZINC as well. And you say, "Hi Simon, please find attached the following information from KME for the Proteus rain screen cladding." And you attach a typical draft guarantee, the new sales brochure, and a CWCT test document, which in fact I think was on weather tightness, wasn't it?
It probably was, yes.
Yes, well, we can see from your description of it.
Right.
We can look at the document if you like, but it says it's about wind speed and serviceability and fatigue assessments, which demonstrates a 50-year lifespan. Do you know what had prompted you to send this information and material to Mr. Lawrence?
It would have been a request from Rydon's, particularly
Right.
Simon Lawrence.
I see. Was the Proteus product, the Zinc HR Proteus product, still being considered at this stage, 30th of April 2014?
I believe it must have been, yes, because it would have been, as you said, the documents, it would have been.
When you saw this email, were you surprised that the Proteus HR marine screen panel product was still a candidate after all the value engineering you'd done on Rainer Bond ACM?
No, because that was still the architect's preferred cladding system at that point. It was still the one in the MBS.
Right. I'd like to look next at the costing error that there was in the ACM and its impact on the choice of face fixed or cassette, if any. It's right to think that you made a cost error in Harley's quotation for Grenfell Tower, didn't you?
That's right, yes.
Now let's look at RYD 409596, please. This is an email chain between you and Zach Maynard at Rydon. And if at page 1, if we start at page 1, at the very bottom of page 1, we can see your email to Zach Maynard of the 23rd of June 2014. And you say, "Hi Zach, I've been through my cost error on Grenfell Tower and enclose the following to explain what happened." And there's some details set out there, which I don't need to go to quite yet. You say my cost error. Is it fair to say that it was you who made the mistake when initially costing the project?
That's right, yes.
Okay, and then you go on to explain, if we look at the bottom of page 1 and over to page 2, how the cost saving error came about. If we look at page 2, I think most of the detail is there. And I don't want to spend time reading it all out to you. But in essence, your original cost had omitted items for face fix, including flashings, smoke stops and supports for the crown, whereas the zinc cost did include those. That's right?
That's right, yes.
And the same in relation to the cassette, but the difference was a bit less.
That's right, yes.
Is it right then that in summary, because of your error, the saving that Harley were able to offer Rydon for face-fixed Reno Bond PE panels was only 376,000 odd pounds as opposed to 576,000 odd pounds?
Yeah, that's it. If that's the figures, yeah, I can't.
Yeah, and the same and in respect of cassette fixed panels, the new reduced savings would be 259,000 instead of 419,000.
Yes.
Now let's go on a bit in time. Can we go to RYD 409823, please? This is an email of the 25th of June 2014 from you to Mr. Maynard, copy to Mark Harris, Grenfell Tower price build-up, and you attach cost-saving error breakdown. And you can say, as in the second paragraph, as you see, the shortfall of both face-fixed and cassette is £200,380. But as explained in my previous email, the cost used for cassette was more accurate than the face-fix, which was a bit low. This would result in an additional shortfall to Harley of around £37,850 if face-fix was selected. Is it fair to say that the cost error was minimised by about £40,000 if the cassette fixing was chosen?
I believe that's the case.
So about £160,000 instead of about £200,000.
Yes.
So would it follow from that, as far as you were concerned, from Harley's financial perspective, a cassette fix was the better option?
It would have been, yes.
Yes. Can we look then at the attachment to this email, the cost-saving error breakdown? It's at HAR 30144785. And here it is, 25th of June 2014. Did you create this document?
Yes, I did.
You did. We can see in the first box at the top of the page that you set out the original savings for ACM face fixed, as originally calculated and given to Ryden,
Yes.
and compared with zinc. So you can see the saving for ACM, there's the 576 figure. And in the second box, I think you set out the actual savings. So we're
yeah.
comparing the saving given with the actual. Is that right?
That's
I
right,
got that
yes.
right. So we can see from that you'd omitted the additional supports at the head of columns, flashings and copings, and vertical and horizontal smoke stops. For someone with your experience in pricing and estimating, would you agree that this was quite a basic error?
Yes, I would. And at the time, I was horrified by it. And,
Can you explain how you came to make it?
I can't, because if I knew how I made it, I wouldn't have made it in the first place. But unfortunately, it was just a case of omitting too many items and not adding back what the item needed to be added back in.
Right.
But
You can't explain how you came to make that basic error.
well, as I said, I added back items that shouldn't have been added back in, or vice versa.
Can we look at HAR 405775, please? This is an email from Mark Harris to Ray Bailey, copied to you 23rd of May 2014. And if we scroll down to the second email down, you can see there's an email from Bruce Soanes of the 23rd of May also, same day, earlier in the day, 2014, to Claire Williams and Simon Lawrence, copied to Mark Harris. So we can see Mark Harris essentially copying that onto you and then making a comment. So scrolling down, we can see what Mr. Soanes says. He says, under the blue heading, Picasa Web Album, which is actually a reference, he says, the brushed aluminium, natural aluminium brushed H9103S, looks very good. If the appeal relies on the deep shadow joints, and I think the vertical joints channel rainwater runoff, thereby keeping faces cleaner. The natural aluminium seems to have picked up less dirt than the painted panels. It is very reflective, but I don't think it'll get glare comments. And then he goes on to say, if we send the planners to see the example, they will jump on the fact that it's clean of all face fixings, with rivets mostly concealed in return faces to the joints. I know you've assembled cost options to do this, but I've prepared a sketch attached showing how the ACM could be assembled as cassettes or perhaps as a hybrid, which I'm less convinced by. I think the brushed aluminium cassette will be accepted by planners. Now, scrolling up, we can see that Mr. Harris sends this to Claire Williams and Simon Lawrence, but copies in Mark Harris and you. You see that?
Do, yes.
And Mark Harris sends it to Ray Bailey, and you get this. And the comment is, interesting comments from the architect. This might help with our current predicament, ! I've not spoken with Simon about cost issues as yet, and I think I will keep quiet and see how this plays itself out. By our current predicament, did you understand when you saw this email, as you did, that Mr. Harris was referring to your cost estimating error?
That's right, yes.
I see. Is it fair to say that the cost error therefore came to light within Harley in around May 2014?
That's right, yes.
Yes. And do you remember how or when you first discovered it?
I can't remember actually when, but it was myself who discovered it. I was just looking at costs again, just for my own purposes, and I discovered the error.
Were you hoping, or was Harley hoping, that the error would be minimised by a cassette choice without having to discuss it with Ryden?
It possibly was the opinion of Harley, but again, I wasn't really involved in discussions on that.
And again, that's because for Harley, the optimum cost savings would be from choosing cassette and not face fixed, as I think
That's
you said.
right, yes.
And is that why Mark Harris wanted to see how it played out, to your
I
understanding?
think it was, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Can we go to HAR 50944, please? This is an email of the 25th of April from Mark Harris to you, in which, or under which, he forwards to you an email the same day, a little earlier that day, from Simon Lawrence to him, Mark Harris, and Kai Fabionka at Studio E, copied to Bruce Soanes. Afternoon Kai, that should say. It says Kia, but that should say Kai. And he says in the second main paragraph, in order to design a system that achieves the client's requested budget, do you see that? He says we need to be making everything face fix and from flat sheet where possible. Just on that, is it right that by this stage, therefore, 25th of April 2014, you knew that Ryden wanted face fixed for the client's budget?
It's possible, again, reading that, I can't actually remember reading that that email, but that would have been the case.
Right. Okay. But once you discovered your costing error, as you did in about May, I think, as he told us, there was then, was this right, a desire within Harley to have cassette in its own financial interests?
Possibly, yes.
Yes. Now, if we look at RYD 405425, this is an email from Mark Harris to Simon Lawrence, 30th of May 2014, copied to you, as well as Ray Bailey and Daniel Anketell-Jones. And the subject is Grenfell rivet matched to natural brushed alley Rayno bond. And in the second line, or second paragraph, he says, that said, as discussed on site, our preference would be for cassette for lots of reasons. Do you know what the lots of reasons were that he was referring to?
It possibly would have been because of the cost difference.
Yes. Were there any others?
Not that I'm aware of.
Do you remember whether any consideration was given, either by you or anybody else in Harley that you knew of, as to how the different fixings might impact or affect fire safety or fire performance?
No.
Were you aware at this time, or indeed at any other time, when working on this project, that Rayno Bond PE55 in a cassette format was significantly more combustible compared with a riveted format?
No, I didn't know.
Do you know whether anyone at Harley had ever had a discussion about the relative fire performance of each of these different fixing systems?
I don't know.
You don't? Did you yourself make any investigations into how the fixing method would affect fire performance?
No, I didn't have any concerns about it.
Can we then turn to the subject of insulation and go back briefly to the NBS specifications? Now, this is the final version of January 2014 that I want to look at, so not the version we were looking at before, but it doesn't make any difference for this purpose. SEA 50169, please. And I'd ask you to go to page 73. This is page 73, clause 776. And we can see here, under thermal insulation, that what's specified was material, rigid PIR, manufacturer Celotex, and the product reference FR5000 aluminium foil faced both sides. Is it right to say that the installation of the insulation was part of Harley's scope of works?
That's right, yes.
And would it follow from that you were required to provide a quotation which included a price for the purchase and installation of the insulation product?
That's right, yes.
Now, we don't see any alternatives set out in the NBS specification for thermal insulation. That's right, isn't it? I'd ask you to accept that. Can we then turn to the quotation that you prepared in January 2014 at RYD 402607, please. And there it is. It's a lengthy document. But if we go to page 9 again, which we looked at before, which is the cost build-up and the total, we don't see any reference in there to the product specified for insulation, or indeed anywhere in this document.
No, that's in the descriptions for the rain screen cladding in the document. So further back in the document, the insulation is referred to.
Yes, and we can see that if we go back a little bit. But my question is, there's no reference to any particular product.
No.
And if we look at indeed at page 8, the page before, and look under excluded items, we looked at that before. Or rather, we looked at that elsewhere in a different document. But here we see items excluded from our quotation. And we can see that insulation, it's a slight negative here, but insulation isn't included from the items excluded, if you see what I mean. Does that tell us that it must have been positively part of your package?
That's right, yes.
What was the product that was going to be used as contemplated by this quotation?
It was going to be either Celotex or a similar insulation product.
I see. Did you yourself consider whether the Celotex specified, the FR5000, was a suitable product for use at Grenfell Tower?
No, because that wasn't my my role at the company to check those things.
Did you have any conversations with anyone at Harley about whether FR5000 was suitable for Grenfell?
As I said before, the MBS document would have been looked at by Daniel or Ray Bailey.
I think you told us earlier that you didn't go to suppliers and get specific quotations or figures for from specific manufacturers, particularly Celotex.
No, I didn't.
Right. Is there a reason why you didn't go to Celotex and ask for a price for FR5000?
Because we had historic prices for insulation used on previous projects. It was like an item that you can, could be fairly confident in the cost base for, so you can use those on most projects.
But would it not have been sensible, rather than just being fairly confident in the cost base, just to send them an email and ask them for a price?
Just not usual, really. It's just usual practice. Just if we know the prices, unless you've got particular items like the rain screen cladding or the windows, curtain walling, which are the larger items on the project, they're obviously more cost based. But insulation is very much a square metre rate used on a building, so we're fairly confident in those prices.
Right. Given that you had not, or as far as you remember, you couldn't remember whether you'd worked on a project where Celotex was used or not, would it not have been sensible to ask Celotex for a specific price rather than rely on
No, because as I said before, Harley had used that product before, so I was relying on their cost information I was given.
Right. You say Harley had used that product before. Do you know on what projects Harley had used FR5000 before?
I don't know, I'm afraid.
How had you come to understand that Harley had used FR5000 on previous projects?
I can't recall exactly, but again, it would have just been through discussions with, Ray or Mark.
Do you remember specifically, or even if not specifically, generally actually being told that FR5000 had been used by Harley on previous projects?
I can't recall that, I'm afraid.
Can't recall. But that was the impression. You say that's the impression you were given from discussions by.
That's right. It wasn't a case of when the MBS document looked at it. It was this is unusual. This is something we haven't used before. So it was just something that we were happy to use.
Do you know whether anyone at Harley ever made any specific inquiries about whether FR5000 would be suitable to use at Grenfell?
I don't know.
Now, we know that the RS5000 Celotex product was launched on the 5th of August 2014. Were you aware of its of that launch of that product
No.
at that time? Were you aware that it was then specified for use on the Grenfell Tower project shortly after that launch?
I wasn't aware, no.
Were you aware that there had been a change of material from the FR 5000 as specified in the NBS specification to RS 5000 in around August 2014?
No.
Do you know whether that change was the subject of discussion within Harley?
No. Sorry, what time of the year was that?
2014, August 2014.
August. So I think by that point I was actually not on the project anymore anyway, so...
Right. Okay. Well, let's look at a document. Can you go to CEL 409973, please? Now, this is a document created by Celotex called a Salesforce entry in a database. Are you familiar with this document or with this kind of document?
No, I've never seen this before.
There's no reason why you should be,
No.
given it's an internal Celotex document. But let's look at page 2 of it. Now, this is a list of meetings and communications between Celotex's Salesforce or others at Celotex and those at Harley. If you look at the entry for the 24th of November 2014, just below halfway down, you'll see that there are a number of items for that date. The date's on the right-hand corner, right-hand column, and you can see that the second item down against the date of the 24th of November is a meeting with you on the subject of Premier House.
Yes.
Do you remember that meeting?
No.
You don't.
No.
Can we go to CEL 50452 then, please? These are meeting notes taken by Jonathan Room of Celotex after a meeting that he'd had at Harley's offices on the 24th of November. And if you quickly flip to page 2, you can see that Mr. Room has put an email signature on that document. Now, if we just go back to page 1, please, you can see a heading you can see a heading, Mike, under Chartwell House. It's been cut off at the bottom of the screen.
Yeah.
But if we can just scroll up a little there, we can see Chartwell House, South End, tender, windows and cladding refurb, DTZ client, architect, Mike. Was that you?
I believe it was, yes.
Right. Okay. And we can see under Grenfell Tower, MC Rydens, misspelt, and various other things. But do you remember a meeting with Celotex in relation to Chartwell House on the 24th of November?
I don't remember, although I'm looking at that. I think it's actually not referring to me at Chartwell House. I think it's the one below.
Ah,
I think
okay.
it's Premier House is the project.
Right, you're interpreting this as I am, but done a better job. Yes,
yeah.
I understand. So you're talking to... Okay, fine. So and that would be consistent with the Salesforce entry we looked at earlier, where you were having a meeting or discussion with Jonathan Room at Celotex on the subject of Premier Inn on the 24th of November 2014. Yes. Do you remember what was discussed with Mr. Room at that meeting?
I don't, I'm afraid, no.
If we go to CEL 6018, please. This is an email, the same date, late at night, 24th of November 2014, from Jonathan Room to others, I think, but certainly to Daniel Anketell-Jones, Celotex project review. Hi Dan, I spoke with Mark and the team regarding a few projects. And you can see the projects set out there. Grenfell Tower, Premier House, Chartwell House, Southend, and Premier Inn, Terminal 4, Heathrow. Mike had a new project to review. And we can see from the top that, certainly under Grenfell Tower, that RS 5000 was discussed in the context of that project. Do you remember having any discussion at all on that date with Jonathan Room at Harley House about RS 5000?
In relation to Grenfell Tower or other projects?
In relation to any project?
I can't recall, I'm afraid.
Right. Do you remember whether there were any discussions in Harley, either at or after this meeting, about RS 5000?
Not that I was involved in, no.
Right. Do you remember whether you saw a brochure relating to RS 5000 or any other sales literature?
Not that I can remember, no.
Do you remember Mr. Room being provided with any drawings or other documents in relation to the Grenfell Tower project?
Again, as I wasn't involved with the job particularly then, so I wouldn't have been involved in that discussion.
All right. Can I ask you to go to paragraph 30 of your statement, please, at page 7? And we can see under that paragraph you are providing a response to a question at paragraph 4i. And the question was specific consideration given to the combination of the exterior components, e.g. cladding, insulation, windows and methods of fixing, and the fire safety, fire retardancy and compliance with safety standards of the same? And your answer was, I was not involved in this area of work, but I would expect that this would have been looked at by the architects and the Harley design team with advice from the project manufacturers. You say Harley design team, and then you go on at paragraph 40 at page 9. I just want to show you that first before I ask you the questions about it. Page 9, paragraph 40. And the question there that you're addressing is, what was the chain of decision-making, communication and responsibility about the cladding, insulation, windows and fixings? And at paragraph 40, you say 4 lines down, someone in a technical position at Harley would also have been looking to determine whether any given product was suitable and they would be reliant on the supplier. The question is, which particular person at Harley did you have in mind when you referred to the design team, the Harley design team?
It would have been either Ray Bailey or Daniel Anketell-Jones.
I see. What about Kevin Lamb as well?
Yes, probably him as well, because he was designed the job under Daniel.
I see. And when you refer to someone in a technical position, again, same question, who are you referring to?
Say either Ray or Daniel.
And anybody else?
Possibly Kevin, but again, not being in that department, it was their, I'm not aware of what their system was for checking products, so you have to speak to them really, I'm afraid.
Now, at the end of that paragraph, you say the supplier would be told what the product in question was going to be used for and would be sent the relevant NBS specification and drawings dealing with that part of the building. The ultimate decision would rest with the architect in relation to all design matters. Do you remember whether Alcoa, who made Renault Bond at the time, was sent the NBS specification?
I don't know. As I said, the NBS was sent to CEP, but I don't know whether it's forwarded on to Alcoa.
Do you remember whether Celotex was sent the NBS specification for Grenfell?
I didn't send it myself, but it may have been sent later on.
Can we turn to HAR 401018, please? This is an email from you to Jason Bethel, J. Bethel at Ryden, of the 23rd of July 2014. And you say there, further to our telephone conversation, please find enclosed the following information. Within our works package, There is approximately 4,076 square metres of insulation on the project. The value of the insulation material only is £50,945. Now, as we can see from that, this email followed a telephone conversation that you'd had. Do you remember that telephone conversation?
I don't, I'm afraid.
Do you remember what it was about, whether roughly what it was about, or we just
No, I'm
chucked
afraid
it on this email?
I don't remember. Sorry.
Right. Do you know why Ryden didn't know how much insulation was in their work package that they had sent Harley?
In terms of cost or the...
In terms of measurement, square metres, area.
I don't believe it was actually put in the quotation document,
No.
the actual meterage.
No. So do you know why it was that Ryden didn't themselves know what the area of insulation was that was required for the Grenfell Tower project? As this email
Possibly because they
suggests?
didn't measure it from the drawings, they relied on Harley's to actually do that.
I see. Do you know how you came to the value of £50,945 for the insulation?
I don't, without seeing the pricing documents. But it would have been what the cost was for insulation in the quotation.
It's 12. I worked that out as £12.49p per square metre. Now, assuming my arithmetic is right, does that ring a bell with you?
No, I'm afraid it doesn't.
But you can't help us as to where you got that figure from.
It's a long time ago, I'm afraid. Without seeing my pricing documents, I've priced so many projects since then, and I'm trying to recall something from 6-7 years ago.
Was Ryden inquiring, do you remember, as to the cost of the insulation, or were you simply volunteering that information?
I think that was the request, because I've said obviously referred to the conversation, and they've requested that,
Right.
the cost and the square meterage.
Did it strike you as odd that it was only asking about the cost of the insulation at this stage in the project, mid-July, or late July 2014?
I can't remember what I actually thought at the time, but just having seen other documents recently, I believe it's to do with possibly changing the insulation over to a different product. And there was they wanted how much cost was in there for that and the area.
Right.
Again, I'm just relying on information I've
Yes.
seen recently.
Do you know when you first priced up the Celotex FR 5000, the product originally stipulated in the MBS specification?
What, the actual product itself, or just a cost base?
Cost for Grenfell.
It would have been back in December, January.
I see. So not in this email.
No.
I see. Can we then turn to a different document, which is a document generated in January 2015 called the Harley spec, or Harley specification. This is RYD 4646822, please. This is a document which looks as if it was generated initially by Kevin Lamb on the 15th of January 2015, if you look at the bottom right-hand corner. And it went through a number of different revisions through to the middle of July 2015, as you can see from the revision box at the bottom. Were you involved in any way in compiling this document?
No, not at all.
Did you ever see this document during your involvement on the Grenfell Tower project?
I might have seen it in passing, but by 2015, I was not involved in the project.
Right. Were you involved in pricing the items at P1 and P2 on the left-hand side there? The glazing P1 panels and the glazing P2 panels?
Sorry, I can't see the...
You can't. I'm so sorry.
That's all right.
Can you be shown the left-hand side? You'll see glazing P1, where
okay.
the P1 panels have a core of styrofoam, and the glazing P2, which have a core of 25mm Kingspan TP10 rigid insulation. Do you remember quoting for those?
Yes, that would have been in the original quotation.
Yes. Are you able to shed any light on any changes to those specifications later, or were you just not involved in the project by and later,
That's right. No, he changed it.
by this stage and later?
Yeah.
Now, we can see earlier that you were present at a meeting on the 24th of November when RS 5000 was discussed, it appears. Do you know why RS 5000 or FR 5000, either of those, but I think by this stage RS 5000, was omitted from this specification?
No, I don't know.
Would it be usual to omit the insulation specification when designing a facade system?
It's possible it may change once the project has been won and it's actually reached the design stage. Things do change, but it all goes through to approval from the architect. Any changes?
I see. But does this tell us, though, that you yourself can't shed any light on why either FR 5000 or RS 5000 were not referred to specifically in this specification?
That's right. I wasn't involved, so I don't know.
Very good. Well, Mr. Albiston, Mr. Chairman, I've come to the end of my questions that I've prepared. There may be one
Yes,
or two
thank
others that I may have skipped over in my keenness
Yes.
to get to this point.
Well, if we
take a
had
short break.
10 minutes or so, that would be
That should
enough, would it?
be enough, yes.
Yes. Well, Mr. Albiston, Council thinks he's reached the end of the questions, but
Okay.
it needs an opportunity to take stock and check there aren't things he ought to have asked you. So we're going to take a short break now. We'll come back at 10 to 1, please, and then see if there are any more questions
Okay.
at that
thank
point,
you.
all right?
That's fine. Thank
And
you.
again, please don't talk to anyone about your evidence when you're out of the room.
Okay. Thank you.
You go to the usher, please. Thank you.
Okay, not much.
Right, 10 to 1 then. Thank you. Yes, would you ask Mr. Albiston to come back, please? Right, Mr. Albiston, we'll see. Mr. Millett, do you have some more questions?
I have one, Mr. Albiston, and it arises out of an answer that you gave me in your evidence very shortly before we finished, when I was asking you about Celotex. And this is today, day 35, at page 81, line 8. I'll just show this to you. My question at line 6 on page 81, it was, what was the product that was going to be used as contemplated by this quotation? And it was a quotation that we looked at earlier. And your answer was, it was either going to be either Celotex or a similar insulation product. What did you mean, or what were you referring to by a similar insulation product, do you think?
Well, an insulation product would actually give a similar performance to Celotex.
And in your mind at the time, what was that?
I didn't have an opinion at the time of that, but again, it would have been a technical point built up by a technical team at Harley.
And when you say a similar performance, similar in what respect?
In terms of what the thermal properties of it, or if there's any fire properties or whatever.
So you would include fire safety performance?
I think it probably would be, yes. Anything, if it was particular for that product, yes.
I see. And does that tell us that at the time you didn't see any distinction between different products, different insulation products, as regards fire performance?
No, I didn't.
Right. Okay. Thank you very much. Mr. Albiston, I have no further questions for you. I just wish to say a thank you to you for coming to the inquiry and assisting us with our investigations. So thank you very much.
Yes, well, we're very grateful to you, Mr. Albiston, for coming along. It's very helpful to have had your evidence, and now you're free to go.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. If you'd like to go with the usher, she'll look after you.
Thank you.
Well, Mr. Millett, it would probably be convenient to adjourn at this point and start our next witness at 2 o'clock.
Very good, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much.
2 o'clock, please. Thank you.